Today's meeting will be recorded. My name is Kyle Donlevy. I'm with the Corps of Engineers in the Galveston District. Ari, would you like to introduce yourself with FEMA?
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Ariana Thomas. I am the Region 6 Hurricane Program Manager for FEMA, supporting your great state and local communities. Glad to be here. And just one more alibi, please check to see if your phones and computer are muted. This is being recorded, so please mute your phones and your laptop. Thank you.
Thanks, Ari. Passing it over to Tatum, Blake, and Carmen.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is Blake White. I'm with TDM Region 4, Section Chief of Preparedness and Response. We'll be assisting Carmen Apple, who's my counterpart in Region 3, and assisting Army Corps of Engineers, Texas A&M, and FEMA with this study. Thank you. Thank you,
Chief Blake. And over to A&M, Walt.
I am Walt Peacock. Unfortunately, you're going to hear a good bit from me in the presentation today, and hopefully we'll get to meet in person as well too. I'm a professor in the Department of Landscape Architecture and Urban Planning. I've been at A&M for 22 years now, and been involved in a number of these projects. So I look forward to working with y'all. David?
Yes, good morning. My name is Dave Burling, and I'm a senior research scientist and program manager with Texas A&M Transportation Institute out of our Houston office. And Daryl Bohart is also with our office. He's going to be working later in this project on the transportation analysis. He's not able to be with us, but we're very pleased to be able to work with Army Corps, FEMA, A&M with Walt and the team up there, and working with you all on this. So thank you.
Doug?
Hello, I'm Doug Wanenberger. I'm a professor on the faculty in the Landscape Architecture and Urban Planning Department as well. And most of the maps that you see will be something that I put up.
And Alexander?
My name is Alexander. I'm in College Station, Texas A&M, postdoc research. Nice to meet you all.
All right. Thank you, everyone that introduced themselves there. FEMA, Texas A&M, and TDM. So I couldn't do this without their assistance. Like I said, A&M is really leading the effort in this study, and big shout out to TDM, Chief Blake and Chief Carmen for helping us conduct these meetings, both the virtual meeting and the in-person meetings that you'll learn about here in a little bit. And then Ari with FEMA, she's also been crucial as a hurricane program manager. If you could, please put your name and organization and county and your contact information in the chat. Like I said, we're currently recording this meeting. We will take those notes and put that in a log so that we know who we were able to contact today concerning the evacuation study. So if you could just take a minute to go ahead and put that in the chat, that would be appreciated. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Walt, and he's going to take it from here, talking about the specifics of what the hurricane evacuation study is and the information that we're going to need from everyone out there. Thank you. Go ahead, Walt.
Great, thanks, Kyle. I do want to mention that we intentionally put y'all on the team slide there because we are really working for y'all. We're technical consultants to help you develop your comprehensive evacuation plan for your counties and for your areas as well too and stuff. So please do make sure you put your name, organization, and contact information in the chat as well too, because this is got to be an important iterative team process here. So I'm going to give a quick overview of the hurricane evacuation study kind of process, talk a little bit about what's happened already, some of the data that's been created, and then get deeply into the vulnerability analysis and what we are going to be involved in over the next number of months as well too into the summer. And then talk a little bit more specifically about our next steps in terms of meetings and data needs and the like. And then we'll open it up to discussions. The last slide also will have our contact information as well too, and we will be posting this on the project website as well too. So first of all, just the overall hurricane evacuation study. As many of y'all know, the way things have traditionally been done here in Texas is that we've got 4 hurricane evacuation study areas. The Sabine Lake area, the Houston-Galveston area, the Coastal Bend, and the Rio Grande Valley. The Coastal Bend finished up their study in 2020, Rio Grande Valley in 2016. The Lake Sabine area that was back in 2011, and Houston is way back in 2004, although there was incredible work done by the HGAC to develop new evacuation zones for the area as well too. Then that was Harris and Galveston, a number of other counties as well, which we'll talk about. Next slide, Kyle. Given how things have slowed down or kind of hit a bit of a snag there, the National Hurricane Program has combined together the Houston, Galveston, and Sabine Lake study areas into one area. I don't know if it'll continue this way, but at least that's the way we're going to try to carry this thing out this time. And we're kind of terming that the Southeast Texas Hurricane Evacuation Study or Restudy area. Quite frankly, this one scares me to death. We've got 12 counties involved, and these counties are incredibly diverse. We've got, population sizes ranging from almost 5 million down to just 11,000. We've got areas to be covered here of, 1,700 square miles to 334. The densities of population range markedly, and so that also implies very different urban and rural areas we're talking about. Incredible socioeconomic, demographic, and economic variability in characteristics. Also, if we look at the extent and nature of hurricane hazard and exposure in these areas, we see a great degree of variability as well. And the established hurricane risk and evacuation zones. Some have been utilizing zones for a number of years, well-defined zones, and others haven't. There are old historic zones, but nothing that has been done recently. So we've got incredible diversity that's really going to require us all to work together to try to come up with a hopefully consistent set of evacuation zones, and then fundamentally a vulnerability analysis, and then helping y'all come up with your more comprehensive evacuation plan as well too. Kyle, if you could go to the next slide. This is a little diagram of the hurricane evacuation study process, if you will. There are basically 5 steps in that process: the hazard analysis, the vulnerability analysis, behavioral, shelter, and transportation analysis. All of this process is to provide y'all at the local level with information that you can utilize to come up with your own comprehensive evacuation plan. So I look at this as being the beginning of the process rather than the process, because much more has to happen in terms of taking the results of this and actually turning it into a plan that will be operational and effective at your local levels. The hazard analysis is essentially finished. We've got surge data, wind data, and a report will be forthcoming on that. And we're into the vulnerability analysis, which is the focus of what we are stepping into right now. There will be behavioral, shelter, and transportation analysis. We're waiting on final funding on that, but hopefully that will begin toward the end of the summer and fall and continue until early next year and for completion on that. Next slide. So in terms of the vulnerability analysis, there are 2 actual phases, I guess I should say sub-phases to that. The critical one is the critical one, at least initially, is the evacuation zone assessment, modification, and development, or redevelopment, if you will. The coming up with these evacuation zones is really going to be driven by the hazard analysis, the results of that first step, the first phase there, updated population and other data, infrastructure data, et cetera. And then if there are existing evacuation zones to kind of play off of, or simply develop new zones given the new hazard analysis and vulnerability components there. To facilitate, given we're dealing with a very large area, very diverse area, to facilitate this, we're kind of breaking the area up into upper, middle, and lower areas. Hopefully these will work for y'all. If they don't, let us know and we can modify them. But basically dividing it up in part so that we can focus on when we are doing our in-person meetings, actually getting down and organizing folks that are in those areas, as well as kind of addressing some of the unique issues for those areas. To facilitate that process as well, there is a working website. There's a URL there. You can grab your cameras out and click on that, and it'll get you to the working website. I want to reiterate that this is a developing website that will contain. It actually already does contain a good deal of the data that we will be using, but there is much more data that needs to be added to that to actually help y'all and us in coming up with these evacuation zones and ultimately carrying out the vulnerability analysis. We will also continue this website past the end of the project for areas that don't have the full capabilities, GIS capabilities and the like. We will keep this up and operational, actually integrated into a broader state website that we have that can be utilized for y'all as you're going on with your not only evacuation planning, but other planning activities as well. After we complete that initial phase, then we'll move into the detailed vulnerability analysis. We're of course going to deal with some vulnerability, let's try that again, Walt. Vulnerability data in the evacuation zone assessment phase, but then we'll get into very detailed component as well in terms of the vulnerability analysis. So I'm going to go into both of these in much more detail, kind of laying out the basics here, and then talk about our next steps after that. Next slide, please, Kyle. So in terms of developing our evacuation zones, these are some potential guiding principles that have been used in other areas in Texas in terms of coming up with these evacuation zones. So kind of our guiding principles, if you will. We'll discuss these at the local meetings and get them as well too out to you. So life safety, of course, should be the critical issue, getting the public out of this potential harm's way, especially with respect to the surge hazard data. Surge is the big killer as well. I mean, we know wind can be issues, but surge is the big killer for hurricanes. And so we're going to kind of focus on that. We also want zones that will facilitate risk and warning communication. I mean, the purpose of coming up with these zones is to be able to communicate with the public on their risk, and then to number 4, facilitate the emergency management decision-making there and calling for evacuation to hopefully get people out of harm's way, to not create the massive issues that we faced with respect to Rita and other situations. So facilitating the communication, but then also facilitating emergency management decision making, avoiding zone identification based on storm categories, because we know that storms do not always act as they are categorized. If we think about Ike, essentially a Cat 1 storm with Cat 4 surge. If we think about other storms as well too, there are a great variety of issues that can compound that. And so coming up with evacuations or risk zones that are not, don't get the public fixating on those categories is important. And then striving for regional consistency as well too. I mean, the HDAC evacuation zones where you can see consistency across the counties, and we'd like to kind of extend that to the entire region as well too, and maybe even think about what's gone on in the other areas also. Next, Kyle. In terms of the hazard data, as I mentioned, that phase has been completed by the Army Corps and NOAA. They have run extensive number of slosh modeling runs, taken those and developed MEOWs, or the maximum envelopes of water, with respect to various storm categories and the like. You can see that they've a total of 216 MEOWs, looking at a variety of different directions, intensities, and forward speeds, and all done assuming high tide. So we're getting the greatest, or at that period where the greatest surge is likely to occur. Out of that, developed MOMS, or maximum, the maximum of maximums, if you will. And what we've got on the website is the most recent data for Cat 1 through Cat 5 storms. You can turn those on individually for those different MOMS and get a sense of what the water levels are likely to be. On the map there, this is actually on the website, so it's just an image of the website showing the middle and upper planning areas that we were talking about with the precise slosh data on that. Next slide, please. And this is just the from the same data for the lower and middle as well too. And then we've got additional data that we'll add to that, or we are on the website, and some that we will be adding.
I was just leaving it. I get what it is, but I'm thinking.
You said that, and I went, okay, somebody's gonna, somebody's. It kind of cracked me up.
We've got a hot mic out there.
You know what's that?
Hot mic. Rick asked.
No, I'm gonna bore you with the details.
Hot mic.
Someone emailed me a question about the wall that was.
Rick, Ash, can you please mute?
Hang on.
Okay. Yes, go ahead and go to the next slide. This just shows a detail, and you can zoom in. So this is part of Harris County and a little bit of Liberty County there as well too. So you can get a sense of the nature and resolution of these data. One more slide, if you don't mind. We've also taken these data and processed and smoothed them a little bit to kind of facilitate our planning activities. We will go back and forth between both of these different layers, but here we've taken the MOMS. We've tried to smooth out the edges and the boundaries and kind of do a slightly better job of, well, I don't know if it's a better job, but it's slightly modified display of the actual different MOMS, as well as the boundaries between them and the boundaries to the extents there. We're being conservative in the development of these. We'll go into details on this later, but being conservative, but can potentially help in terms of making decisions about where those evacuation or risk area boundaries should be located. Next. So this just again from the website, just kind of showing the smooth MOMS as well too. In addition, we'll have the FEMA flood zones on there. We also have maximum envelopes of wind layers as well. We can include sea level rise. And if there are additional data that you would like for us to include, please contact the team. Let us know if there are data sets that are unique to your area as well too. We can incorporate those in, so we can actually kind of look at what's maybe particularly relevant to your areas with the inclusion there as well too. All right, next slide. In addition to the hazard data, we also want to look at, vulnerability in terms of population, where it's located, as well as potentially some infrastructure. These are some of the data that we'll also include. We've got land scan data, which is population estimates at a 90-meter resolution. So we can utilize those to kind of figure out where population is located as well too. We've got estimated evacuation route flooding based on the surge data. These are rough estimates. On this slide here, the yellow represents the recognized or identified evacuation routes, and the red indicates the potential flooding in those areas as surge comes in to those areas. These are estimates and certainly can be supplemented by local data and knowledge as well too. If there are local data that you have for identifying particular routes that are highly subject to flooding and the like, then including those or getting those data to us so we can include them in terms of the decision making would be great as well. Next slide. We also have some unique census data that we're employing. This is sometimes called the LEHD or origin and destination data that actually is at the block level that shows the number of residences in an area. And then we can also bring up employment as well, where the jobs are located to help make some decisions. Next slide. We also will have the transportation road network data up there, as well as the zip code tabulation areas. So this map shows the region there with the zip codes in there. We can, if y'all are particularly interested in your area or the like, include all kinds of critical facilities in there. Again, I want to reiterate that if there are additional data that are particularly local data that you would like us to include, please let us know, and we can incorporate them as well too to facilitate the process of coming up with these evacuation zones. Next slide. And then, of course, another critical element are the current evacuation zones. What we've got here is the HGAC zip zones for the area. You can see we've got them for number of the counties, and then some other counties don't have those data. We know in the upper area that there was the 2011 transportation analysis. There were different kinds of maps in there. If there are some of those maps that you would like us to include to facilitate the evacuation zone planning there, again, please let us know and we can incorporate those in. We also know that there are maps that were done in the late 90s and early 2000s as well too. We have those, many of those layers. We can include those if you want to see something along those lines as well too. Next slide. This just shows the most recent surge data in there. And you can see that it extends well into the other county, well, in Harris County, and of course in Liberty, Jefferson, and the like as well too. So it will be important for us to kind of develop the new zones for those areas based on these data. Next slide, please. This just shows the lower area too, so we don't have anything for Jackson. We can again pull in the early 2000 data for those. If there are other data that you would like us to include in there that y'all may use for decision making and the like, please let us know as well too, and we can incorporate those. Next slide just shows the surge. So you can see the surge into Jackson County as well into some of the other areas. Next. So that kind of goes through the first phase of this vulnerability analysis, coming up with the modified or new evacuation zones. The vulnerability analysis itself will provide detailed data and analysis on population and infrastructure in each of the hurricane risk/evacuation zones, as well as other data to facilitate not only the transportation analysis that'll happen, but also comprehensive evacuation planning. There'll be very detailed data on population, highly vulnerable population as well. But we also hope that the data that we provide can be used for broad-based disaster resiliency planning, whether it's in mitigation planning as well as in recovery planning. We use many of these kinds of data to facilitate and help local communities come up with these plans, as well as we've incorporated them into our research and found that they are quite effective at not only monitoring, but understanding what are likely areas that can be addressed with different kinds of mitigation and adaptation planning. The analysis that we'll be conducting will be providing counts and proportions and percentages relative to each county. So we'll focus on what's going on in each county to facilitate your decision-making as well. Primarily, we'll be focusing on the risk zones with these counts and percentages, but we'll also utilize data for various census geographies, blocks, block groups, and census tracts, and where possible, point and parcel data, as well as model data that we've developed to actually get estimates for where different populations are of different characteristics are located, as well as other elements of risk and vulnerability. Our results will be produced in the form of reports and tables, which will put you all to sleep. But hopefully also we will post these on the GIS and our website, as well as provide GIS and mapping data and products that if y'all have your own GIS capabilities, you can include and incorporate those in. And if you don't, certainly utilizing our website. And I understand that there also may well be a larger website housed in DC that will actually enable some of that as well too. But those will include heat maps, modeled point data, as well as pop-outs and stuff. I'll show you some examples here. Next slide. We'll also include population and household counts and percentages, vehicles, as well as vehicles per household, tourists and seasonal populations, where hotels, motels, vacation housing is located, estimated occupants and vehicles, individuals and households needing transportation assistance, households in mobile homes or manufactured homes, critical facilities, schools, and the like. And this is just a map. This is from the Coastal Bend area, where you can click on a particular evacuation or risk area. Pop-ups will come up with information about the counts for individuals, likely number of vehicles, et cetera, for those areas. Next slide, please. Also, different kinds of data or different portrayals of those data as well, too. So we'll have employees where the jobs are, as well as residents, estimated assessed property values for vulnerable properties. This is really going to be subject on based on the parcel data that we counties can make available to us, and then a whole variety of maps showing different socioeconomic and vulnerable populations. So elderly, children, single-parent households, again, transportation-dependent households, rental housing, which can be important for population displacement, as well as long-term recovery issues, households in poverty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can get an idea. The map over here, these are the top map are block group data, showing different levels of households that are transportation dependent, or in this case, households without a private vehicle. We've also then taken those and modeled those at a more refined level. That's what the bottom map is showing. These are a bit more heat maps to actually show where concentrations are of high concentrations of households that don't have access to private vehicles as well too. So both of these will be up on the website, as well as layers if you are interested in those. Next, please. So back to the evacuation zone assessment and our modification issues. The next steps. So after this kickoff, we'll have begin the process of having in-person meetings, as well as potentially virtual meetings with stakeholders, with all of y'all in the different planning areas. We'll work on agreement on the guidelines, review and work with the data, both inside and outside the meetings, propose and consider, what are some of the problems and issues, and what might we do in terms of modifying the existing evacuation zones and or developing new zones, as well as developing consensus both within and among counties. Those are tall orders there, but I think if we all work together as a team, we can help y'all come up with these decisions. Our goal here is to have agreement and consensus by the end of May, early June, Remember, these are evacuation zones for 2025, not for this year, because they need to be incorporated into y'all's comprehensive planning as well too. Just to give you a little bit more detail, Kyle, if you go to the next slide. The meetings, we've already set up the first set of meetings. So we're going to begin with the middle planning zone. So the Harris, Galveston, Chambers, and Liberty County. We're planning a full day right now, March the 18th, and we have reserved the 19th if we need it. So there's the location. The upper planning zone will be April the 1st. And those are for the counties there, and will be held at the Orange County Convention Center. And then the lower will be April 15th. So get your taxes done before then. And then we'll meet there at the Lake Jackson Civic Center for that. Blake and Karma worked on doing these, and so we really appreciate their work on setting up these first meetings. Just to give you a little bit better sense of kind of what we planning for this first set of meetings, if you go to the next slide, Kyle. Again, we'll kind of review and the guidelines, the general guidelines. So please share with us if you see particular problems or issues that you want to potentially modify with respect to those. That's back on slide 8. We will make these slides available. We'll review and work with the different data layers as well too. If y'all want, we can do number of virtual meetings, actually walking through the website so that y'all can get used to what's on there and different ways of utilizing the website. Please remember that this is always going to be an evolving website and subject to change as we get new data, as we modify the different tools in there. Some of it will be changing as we go through the process of this whole the vulnerability analysis, as well as went into the transportation work as well. We'll then look at, what are potential problems and consider what are some of the solutions that might come up with as well too. So we will produce sets of maps that we think are particular problems and issues. Y'all hopefully will be able to work with the website prior to some of the meetings as well too, and point out what you see as potential issues, and so we can target in on those and actually come up with solutions. It is going to be undoubtedly the case that there are going to be some similarities, but there are also going to be some differences as well too. So here on the upper map there is just the the areas, I guess we'd say middle and upper parts of the coast, showing the coastal and current evacuation zone A zones, and then the up to Cat 2 surge for those areas. We know that there are incredibly difficult issues to be addressed when thinking about Galveston and the movement of Galveston County's population through Houston, and then also getting Houston population out that is in high hazard areas. So you can see areas that are subject to surge as well at up to Cat 2 surge, and decision making that's going to have to be that may be considered there. There's extensive potential flooding inside, but there's also going to be important to have phasing process there. On the other hand, with Chambers County, where there may not be the same phasing issues that are encountered, there may be, clearly potentially want to extend the evacuation zone A to include a little bit more of those areas that are subject to surge as well too. Again, I'm just pointing out that there are going to be issues that will face as we're going through these issues. We'll have very large maps so we can modify those things, as well as the website, as well as operating GIS system in those meetings as well, so we can modify boundaries there as well too. Our goal is, again, to develop consensus, certainly within the counties and hopefully in the different planning areas, but across these areas as well too, at least in terms of some of the conventions as well too. We see these meetings as only the beginning of that process. There'll be additional vetting, not only with y'all and your county governments as well, but also there may be additional meetings that are necessary, and that there will definitely be additional meetings that are necessary. And so we'll do some of those in person as well as we'll do them via virtual meetings as well too. Again, please make sure you put your information in the chat so that we can get information out to y'all and help organize, make sure that you get notices for the meetings and the like too. Next slide. So just to kind of reiterate some of what I've said, as well as to bring up some additional issues in terms of data and input needs. Again, if there are additional evacuation zone or similar decision criteria that y'all may employ, or mapping criteria that y'all may employ, please do let us know and allow us to incorporate those data into our website here. If there are additional flooding data, particularly local flooding data related to roadways, as well as especially if the area is outside of the FEMA flood zones that we need to consider, please do notify us that, and we'll get that data and incorporate it in. And then, any other additional data that, especially at local level, that y'all would like us to incorporate in there, please do contact us so that we can facilitate that exchange. As we get into the vulnerability analysis, there's bound to be other data that we would like and y'all would like to see on there as well too. I've already mentioned the parcel, and if we have land use data maps, those would be particularly useful. We'll go through a lot of this again. But if there also are special needs listings and registries that are mapped out, that can be helpful. We can protect PPI issues. Do not send those data to us until we discuss the nature of those data and work through our IRB at Texas A&M and work out an effective way of dealing with and addressing those data. And then we'll work with you to incorporate those. If there are MOUs related to evacuation and sheltering, host counties and the like, getting that information for us for the sheltering analysis and stuff, this is a little bit down the road, but in anticipation, that would be great. And then mitigation and recovery related data, if there are things that you want us to include in the vulnerability analysis on that, we'll certainly would welcome those data and incorporate them also too. Next slide. I think that's it. I talked a good bit here. Y'all forgive me. It's one of those curses of being a professor, that you can talk forever. So if there are any questions or discussions, please, we'll open it up to that now and address those. There's the contact information also. Thank you.
Hey, Walt. Yeah, I appreciate it. Like, as everyone can see, there's a lot. This is a very heavy lift that goes into the evacuation study. So thank you, Walt, and to his team for really just doing the groundwork, or the heavy lift on this. There are a couple comments in the chat that I would like to address first. Let's see. One thing to note: to get to the Lake Jackson Civic Center, use the address of 333 East Highway 332. Otherwise, the GPS will send you west of the city. So 333 East Highway 332 to get to the Lake Jackson Civic Center. At this time, I'm going to stop recording, and then we will open it up to questions.